Hello, guys. This is 20 Minutes with 2020 Mendocino, our new podcast series where we will answer questions directly from the public. We will be discussing growing, breeding, and general cannabis industry questions. Though only available in audio form now, expect video segments in the future and interviews from other industry leaders. My name is Carlos, and I'm the creative director over here at 2020, and I will be moderating and asking questions to my co-host, Adam, founder of 2020. Please check out 2020mendocino.com/podcast if you'd like to submit questions, and please subscribe to our YouTube channel and expect more digital content from us in the future. Now, without further ado, I'd like to introduce Adam, founder of 2020.
Hey, Carlos. Thanks for hosting the meeting. I'm looking forward to answering people's questions, and I see we already have quite a few good submittals, and I'm excited to go through them and get this podcast rolling. And I also want to add that in the future we do plan to interview other people from the industry and kind of keep this podcast active and exciting.
Right on. So I think we should just roll right into it. I'm going to start with a question from Sven. I think this is a good introductory question. Hi, I'm an aspiring breeder, and I was wondering how you feel about other people using your genetics for their breeding projects.
Okay, yes, that's a great question. So at 2020, we consider ourselves an open source genetics company. We believe in sharing genetics. We have a strong belief that nobody owns the genetic code to any strain, and I think that that's rooted in our history and culture of being from Mendocino County and from an area of a history of cannabis cultivation, where neighbors shared strains for years and very little strain hoarding was not very prevalent for many years, and the strains that we have are built upon the past, and this goes back way farther beyond just the cannabis cultivation in the United States, but going back to land-raised strains and literally thousands of years of building these strains. So we see ourselves as just a building block in this, and we're proud to see other people use our strains. And I know for us, we always choose wisely when we do decide to breed with other strains, and we go through quite a process to pick them, and I always hope that people do the same for ours. And so when I see our strain popping up on somebody's on breeding list, it actually makes us really proud. So please use our strains and share it with us. I think, the one thing we ask is just give us credit. And I try to look at this a lot like music. I make a lot of analogies to music, but we all have our favorite musicians that we listen to, and aspiring musicians get their ideas and a lot of their style from other musicians, and they build on that. And it's certainly not stealing, although I guess it can be. It's the way that creativity evolves. So I think thanks, Carlos.
Right on. I think as a hip hop fan, hip hop was kind of formed off samples back in the day, so that was an issue for that. So I agree. I think as long as credit is given, that's the way to go, man. It's an ethical way. So I'm gonna jump on to a different subject. I have a question from Cole. What is the biggest difference between breeding autoflowers and breeding photoperiod plants?
Okay, I'm ready for that one. So that the funny thing about that question is there's basically nothing that makes them the same. I mean, that's the best way to put it. Besides there being female plants or pollen, and and that's about the only thing that makes them related. So you're going to get different answers from different people on this question based on their background. However, we come from a photo period breeding background, and then we've kind of evolved into becoming autoflower breeders. So obviously we have a different a different take on it than some people. But to me, autoflowers are much more complicated in that it's always a moving target. So while you're with photos, it's really simple to basically to do a pheno hunt, essentially find a winning phenotype, gather clones of it, and then you can either self it or you can really use those genetics which you have pinned down to exactly what you want, and use those to make other things or to take it further. With autos, it's a constant moving target, so you can't take really you can't take clones and really do much with them. You can physically clone an auto plant, but you can't really do a whole lot with it afterwards. Um, so you're kind of constantly jumping to the next generation. So it's turn and burn breeding in a sense, because it happens pretty quickly, but you're also jumping to the next generation all the time. And without being able to know both parents really well, like you can with photo period breeding, you can make changes. You inherently make changes to the strain every generation, um, and so that becomes a problem if you're trying to really hone a certain characteristic. So the way we like to do it is the biggest quantity we can to try and start with the most plants possible, and literally just get rid of anything that doesn't make us happy on the female side. Um, and so that means if we can start 100 females and um, and pollinate all of them, but then in the end we basically have to pheno hunt out the best ones. So this could be a whole nother subject, and in fact, Carlos, I want to move on, but let's earmark this as a subject for the future, and we can go into a whole 20-minute session just on this alone.
Right on. Sounds good, man. So I'm going to jump around to another question. This is from Ryan. Hi, I would really like to switch over from conventional chemical pesticides to a cleaner, more earth-friendly organic regimen. Some of my friends tell me that organic pesticides simply don't work. Is that true? If not, can you give me some advice on where to start?
Okay, so yeah, that's a really good question, and I think in my earlier years, I would have been in with his friends telling him I don't think organic pesticides work. And when we had definitely tried some different kind of home remedy style things that just didn't really do the trick. And if you have an outbreak, honestly, a bad outbreak of any pest can be pretty complicated to clear up with conventional or organic. However, the state of California has forced permitted growers to use very specific chemicals or non-chemical based fertilizers. And although I think all of us struggled with that in the beginning, it's actually been a godsend. And I've completely proven that absolutely no, your friends are wrong, and organic IPM schedules actually work really good, and they're fairly affordable. The key, and I think everyone says this and everyone pounds this drum, however, not everybody listens to it, is that it's all about preventative maintenance. So you can't like sit around and wait for an outbreak. You have to essentially assume that you always have everything, and you treat your plants with a cyclic regimen, and you can essentially be basically pesticide bug free, and alleviate the use of nasty chemicals. And so I think this is another great subject that we can do a full 20-minute session on, because I have a whole lot of stuff I can talk about on this one. So it's a good starting question. Let's move on, and let's earmark this one again for
Well,
a future episode.
We can go further into it, but do you mind just giving him a couple of products to look into?
Yeah, certainly. So we some of our favorite products, we use a product called Pure Crop One, which is an oil based. It basically it's really good on powdery mildew. It's super high pH, So it's not quite high enough to damage the leaves, but it will. But it creates an environment that the powdery mildew cannot live in. It's also works really good on spider mites. It does actually work as a knockdown. You can spray infested plants, and the next day, like, there's literally most of the spider mites are dead. And if you keep up with that, you can pretty easily eliminate the bug problem as well. So that's actually a local product. I believe it's out of Ukiah in Mendocino County. Um, and yeah, that was Pure Crop One. Another one that we've kind of recently discovered for fusarium issues and any kind of root rot problems. It's a product called Mycostop. It's a preventative maintenance type thing as well. If you have any kind of issues, serious outbreaks of pythium or root rot, those are really hard problems to just eliminate. But again, this is something that you can basically do as a preventative maintenance on, and you can eliminate these things, or keep these things from ever actually taking hold in your room. So another important thing to note is that growing on a small scale, this is a much easier thing to manage in general. The IPM schedule itself is easier to manage, and so is keeping your facility clean. I mean, if you have a small tent, you can basically, you have very few guests that come by. Typically, you have a lot less airflow moving things in and out. You have just a general smaller footprint. And if you do get an outbreak, it's a heck of a lot easier to deal with because you don't have as many cracks and crevices and so much surface area to deal with. So those were a few products, but again, I think we can really go into a full 20-minute on this one. We can break it down from the individual pests and what we recommend for each of those.
Okay, so let's jump around. I have a question from Michael. Why do you prefer to use STS over colloidal silver? What are the pros and cons of each?
All right, Michael. So yeah, that's again a great question. Yeah, we've experimented with both. We've had good luck and success with both. I think overall the biggest two differences are the price and the consistency. So with STS, you tend to have a fairly almost 100% guaranteed chance of reversing the plant with the same formula every time. With colloidal silver, it varies. So sometimes you need to use a little bit more concentration or maybe spray more often. So you have to kind of work with the strains. Now, I want to go back to the guaranteed reverse part because there is problems where certain times you reverse plants and there just isn't any pollen or there's very little pollen, and that's just an ongoing issue that I don't know if anyone's really officially solved. It's just that certain strains, when they're reversed, just don't put out the same amount of pollen as others. However, both of these products do work. We have had great success with both, but we have kind of officially switched to STS, and it's the spraying regimen and the fact that the STS is substantially cheaper. So even if you make your own colloidal silver, it's still it's actually a little complicated to make it to the perfect ppm properly. Although you can use a laser to determine the parts per million, but using a parts per million meter does not actually work correctly. So I don't really like the consistency, not knowing exactly the concentration that I'm making. But we have successfully done it with homemade colloidal silver. So yeah, I think it's the price and the simplicity.
Right on. Thanks for that. So I think we have time for one or two more questions. Let's do this one. Zach from Florida asked, please tell me what is the best method for rooting clones? Rock wool, Oasis, Rapid Rooter, aeroponic clothing, etc.?
Oh, okay. So yeah, I think this is a question that I actually get quite a bit, and the answer is simple yet complicated. So what I usually tell people is that use what works best for you. And if you have the opportunity to test the different methods in your specific environment, that's really the best way to do it. So I can quickly go through each of these and tell you what my opinion of the pros and cons of each of these methods are, and then and maybe that'll hopefully answer this question for Michael. So just to let you know, we actually use rock wool. Rock wool is not the most common way, according to the statistics from the local hydroponic store in Humboldt, where I purchase a lot of stuff. It's a commercial hydroponic store, and I asked the guy one time, like, what do you sell the most of? And he said Rockwool was about 20% of their sales for cloning medium, and Oasis was closer to 40%. So that's much more common. And then I think Rapid Rooters and Aeroponics made up the rest. So I think we're obviously in the minority on that one, but we've just done side by sides multiple times, and in our environment, in our clone room, it just works best for us, and so that's what we use. It tends to hold water better, so it's a little less maintenance than some of the other methods. It does have you are supposed to soak it in an acidic water and I believe it's a 5.5 pH water to neutralize the pH. So with Oasis, it's a pretty popular method. They're cheap. They're about the same price as Rockwool, I believe. So in price, you're about the same. Rapid rooters. A lot of people love rapid rooters. A lot of people have really good success with them. The plugs are a little pricier. When they do put out clones, I mean, the clone for us, the roots take a little longer to come out than Rockwool, but they do tend to hold up well because it's kind of a little more of a soily type substrate. Aeroponics work great when it works good, but when it fails, it's catastrophic, and that's the problem with aeroponics. So we've used that method over the years, and it absolutely, I mean, it's the fastest way to get clones. But boy, when you have any sort of catastrophe, either a rot issue, some type of pathogen gets in that water, or just a simple pump failure, then you basically lose everything in the whole room. So it's a little riskier. So we don't use that method anymore, but it certainly works good. And it, depending on the substrate you're going into, it can be an issue. If you're going straight into rock wool or something, it's a little more complicated than if you're going into soil. And that I'm referring to the aeroponic on that. So I think the very best thing to do is to try the different methods in your facility and see what works best with your style and with your environment.
Right on. I think we're going to squeeze in one more question from Daniel. For growing outdoors, is it better to start from seed or start from clone?
Yeah, so that's a great question. So being from Mendocino County and from an outdoor growing culture and background, the standard go-to for growers has always in the past basically been seeds, and there's a few reasons for that. Beginning out of it was necessity, you know, in the 90s and in the 80s especially, like clones were hard to come by, and grow rooms, you know, indoor growing didn't have the technology that it has now and the knowledge that people have behind it. So a lot of people just didn't keep mothers for a season. They didn't operate indoor facilities. It was riskier for law enforcement wise. Having indoor facilities was risky back then. So everybody basically used seeds. Most people use seeds, and you know, now it's probably shifted more towards clone dominant, but there's definitely still people out there that are a firm believer in seeds. And I'll give you a few reasons why. It probably overall, if you're small, you're not trying to produce massive amounts of the same strain or anything like that. I'm always a fan of seeds, and the main reason is the springtime. Seeds don't shock, so you can seeds. It's amazing, but a seedling actually is a very hardy little plant. Now, of course, a pest can take it out really quick, or it can be stepped on and broken pretty simple. But overall, they're actually really quite hardy, and they're not very subject to shock. Now, if you have a clone and you move it out, and it's not the perfect environment, or the light cycle isn't quite right for it, it can start budding. It can basically go into some sort of shock period that could take anywhere from a few weeks to even a few months to recover. So seeds typically don't have that. They start out hardy, they start out strong, and they fly out the gate. So for small home growers and stuff, I mean, feminized seeds, it really, I can't, it's hard for me to tell someone to go with clones. And then last but not least, of course, one of the biggest things is that seeds they don't come with bugs. And in this day and age, unfortunately, most facilities have some sort of pest or pathogen that's probably invisible, and you're not going to see them when they show up at your house, but it's going to end up creating a problem in the future for you. The hidden bug. So um, I have to say, I mean, I would veer towards seeds, either feminized or regulars, if you're not a fan of the fem seeds.
Right on. So we may have gone over the 20 minutes a bit, but this is our first time at bat. We jumped around a little bit on this episode just to give everybody a feel for the format, but I expect future episodes to be themed according to subject. If you enjoyed the first episode, please subscribe to our YouTube channel. And if you'd like to submit questions, please visit www.2020mendocino.com/podcast. Adam, do you have any parting words?
No, I think that this was a really good introduction, and I do believe after going through some of these questions that absolutely that almost every one of these questions could really branch into their own 20-minute session. And I think that was part of our point with making these podcasts 20 minutes, was that we could really kind of do a short and concise grow tutorials or question and answer type setting. And so I believe it's going to work out really good, and it's going to be fun, and there's no better way to learn than to have to talk about it. So and I look forward to feedback from people, and if you got any advice to me, I'm all ears. And if you have any feedback for the show, or you'd like to have more questions, of course, we're ready for more. So thanks, everyone.
Right on. So I hope everybody enjoyed the premiere episode of 20 Minutes with 2020. Thank you, and please tune in for more.